What's up, everybody? If you've already seen this, you can skip ahead to the time on the screen. I wanted to record a new intro for things that are a little too spicy to get to right off the bat. So if you see I have to put the title in the thumbnail and I'll throw this little star in, then you know I'm opening with this and it's not near as long as the time says. But I wanted to do a general history of the world in a nutshell as I see it, and maybe it'll help some of you understand what's going on. At the very least, you'll know who to blame. I'm going to start way back in time. Okay, this video I did was about the primitive cultures of the Pacific Islands back in the big one. American GIs were taking over every island on the way over to Japan, and then they'd start cutting in these airstrips. They started unloading all kinds of personnel that would march out in lines. Then planes would fly over and do these cargo dumps of all kinds of different supplies. So these primitive islanders are sitting there watching all this go down. Then it ends and the Americans pack up their stuff and head back home. Well, you're left with a bunch of primitive islanders that are just wondering what the heck just happened. So then they start thinking, well, what if we get out here and start marching around like they did? And we can cut in a landing strip up on top of the mountain where they can see us from the air, and we'll build a monument to their amazing flying machines, even throw up a air traffic control tower just to be safe. And maybe they'll come back through with some of that sweet cargo. I mean, ice cream is really good. Ambrosia, anybody? Now, these people had no idea where this stuff came from, how it was made, so it might as well be coming from the gods. But you see, these cult rituals spring up almost immediately after the Americans left, and that's not all that sprang up. All of a sudden, you had the wise old sage that understood the will of the gods. Not only that, but the spirit of John Frum would appear to him. Now, this turned out to be John from America, but they just call him John Frum, and it started a whole religion. So the spirit of John Frum instructs him to have these people perform all of these rituals, and then someday those sweet cargo planes will return. That's how easily a priestly class forms. Now, in our distant past, we have beings that are known by every culture, whether you call them the Anunnaki, the Elohim, the Greek gods, the Tuatha De Danann. Everybody remembers some superior being that lived for a long time. To us, they were immortal, much more advanced than us, and teachers of mankind in every culture from Mesopotamia to South America and everywhere in between. Now, I don't know. They may have looked like this or they may have looked like this. But for some reason or another, they left. And I think that they appointed righteous kings over all of the nations before they left. This is where you get the legends of the royal bloodlines. And no matter how rich you get, how many titles you bestow on yourself, nobility can never become true royalty. And that really bothers some people. After the gods left, you had these priests that used to be the servants of the gods. They understood some of the things that the gods had done, like metallurgy and agriculture, and probably some things on the spiritual side, and started the mystery schools with their knowledge. This made them a really rich, powerful class of people, and before long, they were running temples of ill repute and sticking young oracles in volcanic vapors to divine the future. She would answer any question with utter nonsense, but the priests knew how to interpret it. Just like on the island, the priests convinced everybody that they understood the will of the gods. And they became so powerful that even kings couldn't make a move without them. Now let's talk about the Earth catastrophe cycle and jump through a few ages of man. We're skipping a couple, but you got the ancient Mycenaean culture, and then the Bronze Age collapse, and then the Greek Dark Age. Then you have the rise of the Greeks and the Romans, and then they collapse in the Earth shift cycle in 536 AD. Official dating, I'm not getting into the dating right now. But this was earthquakes, volcanoes, flooding, famine, and decimation of society. And then we go into the Dark Ages for 800 years, apparently. And then pop out the other side with a renaissance of all things Roman. And this happens after what we're told is the Black D. Some reports say that we're talking 2/3 of the population gone. And this wasn't just some bug. It was the Earth shift cycle. Here, I can show you, you can read through some of the specific things that happened during this period. If you've never heard this stuff before, you should pause and read it. It's pretty interesting. But I'm going to get on up here to this. Naples, Rome, Pisa, Bologna, Padua, Venice, all of northern Italy, and pretty much Europe got wiped out. This is covered up, and they just used the Black D as an excuse for what happened when most of Europe got wiped out and cities today are still half buried. Now back to the priest class. I know some people won't like this, but I think Jesus came along as an absolute savage and told the people that these hypocrite Pharisees had people bowing down to beings that were long gone. He knocked over their money tables, he started whipping them, and the Pharisees hated him. But the people loved him. News of him spread quickly throughout the Mediterranean world, and this threatened the priests of all the temples. So they decided we better get on board or get left behind, and converted all of their temples to churches. And they started consolidating power into the Church of Rome. Behind the scenes, they're still following the old religion. By the time of the reset 700 years ago, it became powerful enough to declare war on every other religious sect. They cleansed northern Italy and southern France of the Cathars, the Gnostics, the Bogomils, and annihilated every other religion outside of theirs except for one. This one religion outside of Christianity, they permitted to commit usury against the Christians. And this began the modern Unholy Alliance, or just the Alliance. And I suspect this is why we're told that the benevolent God that Jesus was talking about was the same as the vengeful, wrathful, jealous God of the Old Testament, even though Jesus called those priests a den of vipers. Now, I know some people don't like religion. Heck, I don't like religion. But these guys are unimaginably wealthy and responsible for all the conflicts of our modern era. But the priest class couldn't be happy with all of their wealth and opulence, so they argued that their authority was greater than the king's. But for a long time, the king was strong enough to keep the usurpers at bay. After the 14th century catastrophes, the church grew to be the Holy Roman Empire. Families like the Medicis and the Habsburgs allied with the Venetian black nobility, who controlled trade throughout the Mediterranean, and the conquest was going pretty good for them until the 1500s and the Protestant Reformation, which is the most underrated name ever, because this began another period where the Pope had to cleanse the land of the heretics. Millions were inquisitioned for not submitting to papal authority, but Protestants and Old World humanists managed to break away and started the Age of Enlightenment, which is the foundation of all our modern Western nations. But the priests couldn't have an age of reason, so they started a militant order of MK Ultra foot soldiers known as the Society of Jesus, or the Jesuits. And if you have never read their oath, you should probably pause and read this. For 500 years, their objective has been to infiltrate and subvert any kingdom or nation that is broken free from the Pope's grip. Societies like the Square and Compass guys started out as genuine Enlightenment thinkers and was subverted by the Jesuits to where nobody realizes that the top of the pyramid is the Black Popa, the ones they think that they're against. Illuminated ones started by Adam Weishaupt, who was a former Jesuit professor, which is like saying ex-CIA. There's no such thing. You're in or you're deceased. Even Hollywood is just a continuation of them influencing public opinion through drama. So on the face of things, you have the Holy Fathers on the moral high ground, while in the background you have the Superior General managing all of the controlled opposition, which is meant to subvert society through moral decay. 1835, Samuel Morse, inventor of Morse code, warned of their plot to overthrow the U.S. by guess what? Cat-holic relocation. Sound familiar? Okay, I was going for 8 minutes. There's plenty more to be said on this subject. I'll leave you with Abe Lincoln. The Civil War would have never been possible without the sinister influence of the Jesuits. We owe it to popery that we now see our land reddened with the blood of our noblest sons. They don't ever go out on the battlefields. They just convince others to do it. Static out.